Session of our hearing, citizens hearing on disclosure order.
Gentlemen, if you would rise and repeat after me, I'd appreciate it. I do hereby affirm that I will tell the truth and nothing but the truth to this committee today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This promises to be a very enlightened session. And I'm told we're going from right to left. My right, your left. So we're going to start with Captain Robert Salas.
Before that, Madam Chairwoman, may I ask for just 2 minutes of the committee's time?
Let's take that back. We're going to hear from our coordinator, our sponsor, the genius of the hour.
Please, you're killing me here.
You're recognized, Mr. Stephen Beck.
Okay, I'm willing to have an entourage. You can email me with your interest. Look, I wanted to simply make a very simple statement here. That of the 30 hours that is going to take place this week, this is not to diminish all of the other things that are going to take place this week or have. This is the most important 3 hours. This panel is extraordinary, and this information has been out there, but the press, the media have not seen fit to engage it. That must change. The testimony that the committee is about to hear is of the utmost importance to the United States, to the American people, and to decisions that need to be made about how to go forward. These gentlemen are of the highest caliber. Their experience is direct, and the issue that they are speaking to could not be more critical. So I speak to both the committee as well as the people watching on webcast and, of course, the press. This is critical information. Please pay close attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will certainly heed that information. We'll begin with Captain Roger Salas. Am I pronouncing that right, sir?
Salas is correct. Thank you. Ms. Kilpatrick and panel, I would first like to briefly describe the incident that I experienced in March 1967. At that time, I was a first lieutenant, U.S. Air Force, stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. I was trained and assigned duties as a missile launch officer for the Minuteman I intercontinental ballistic missile. I was designated Deputy Missile Combat Crew Commander and part of a two-man crew. My commander at that time was Lieutenant Frederick Mywold. He's now deceased. I will briefly review the diagrams showing the Launch Control Center and the launch facility. We will show you shortly when one of the other speakers present. We were on duty inside the Oscar Launch Control Center, a concrete capsule located about 60 feet underground. We had operational control over 10 Minuteman nuclear missiles. Each missile operates independently and has its own source of primary and backup power systems. It is important for you to note that the command and control for these missiles was entirely located within the capsule. There was absolutely no means to affect any of the missile systems from outside the capsule. On the evening of March 24, 1967, while my commander was on a scheduled rest break, I received the first of 2 phone calls from my topside flight security controller, FSC. The first call was to report unidentified lighted objects flying above the facility. They reported they were flying at very high speeds, making very odd maneuvers, nothing an aircraft could do, and they just wanted to report it. I didn't pay much attention to that first call, and I basically hung up on them. Minutes later, the FSC phoned again and reported in a very agitated state that there was a large oval-shaped object hovering above the front gate. It was a red, pulsating, lighted object, approximately 30, 40 feet in diameter. The best he could describe it. It was difficult to distinguish a structural part of it on the inside, except that it was a glowing red, pulsating object. He had all the men out there with their weapons drawn. He wanted me to tell him what to do next. I, of course, told him something like make sure nothing comes inside the perimeter fence. Of course, our primary duty was to secure those nuclear missiles. Immediately after that call, I started to inform my commander about the incident. As I started to inform my commander, our missiles began to shut down. We lost alert status on all 10 missiles while this object was above our facility. When we queried the fault system, all missiles reported guidance and control system failure. We had a way of querying faults within the system called VERSA. It's a voice-activated system. And we were getting channels 9 and 12, which is guidance and control system. At the same time, we had indicator lights showing security violations at 2 of the launch facilities where the missiles were physically located. While Lieutenant Mywald reported the incident to the wing command post, I phoned upstairs and directed the security alert team to be sent to those launch facilities with security violations to investigate those indications. At that time, the FSC reported to me that the object had flown off at high speed. When the security alert team arrived at the affected LFs, and I'll read LFs meaning launch facilities, they reported seeing the object hovering over those sites. As they approached closer to the object, they lost all communications with the FSC. After speaking to the wing command post, Lieutenant Mywald informed me that the same thing happened at another flight. At that time, I assumed that meant that night, but it turns out what he meant was it happened at another flight about a week earlier, and that's the Echo flight incident, which I'll talk about shortly. Right now, I'd like you to hear the portion of the conversation I had with Colonel Mywald, who retired as a full colonel, and I had this conversation sometime in 1996. Can we play the first audio, please?
Back and forth to phase because they were doing maintenance on, I don't know, the guidance cans or something, and the maintenance crews were staying over, and there was security and maintenance on site on both, on 2 of the 10 sites. And when the first one went down, I talked to the security out there. They had reported this UFO hovering over the site, and I said, "Yeah, right. What are you guys drinking out there?" And we struck strike teams to both of the sites that had been occupied. And both strike teams, I didn't tell them what we had heard via the LF radio, and I told them to go to get within a mile of the site and call back in on the VHF. And they both had reported it too. So we had 2 maintenance crews, 2 security troops on site, and 2 strike teams all reporting it.
Is that right?
Yep.
Do you remember any of the names of any of those guys?
Nope.
You don't?
Sorry, there's a little mix-up there. That was Colonel Walter Fiegel, who was the Deputy Missile Crew Commander at Echo Flight. Can we have the Mywald audio, please?
Any reports from their field about UFOs?
So I remember the 2 guards that had gone out to one of the sites finally got back scared to death. We had to relieve them of duty.
Yeah. Oh, you mean our guards?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, and rhythm patrol type.
Oh, I see.
They had gone out to one of the sites, one of the LFs, and on the way back they lost radio contact, and we ended up having to send them back to base early. I'm not sure what happened, but I don't think they ever returned to guard duty.
And what were they scared about?
Well, they had seen these some crazy things. Then
Oh, they did?
yeah,
They reported that to you?
they reported it to the top side guy.
Oh, the topside guy, that's right. Okay. 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 Well, interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
After we were relieved by another crew the next morning, I arrived back at base.
Mr. Salas?
Yes.
In a couple sentences, would you tell us what we just heard? The conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was a little confusing. The first conversation you heard was Colonel Walter Fiegel, now retired. As far as I know, he's still alive. He's authorized me to use that audio, by the way. It was a recording of a telephone conversation I had with him in 1996. And he described the fact that he had, on 2 of his launch facilities, he had maintenance crews out there and security guards. And when the first missile went down in his flight, they reported that there were UFOs overhead as the missiles went down. He lost all 10 of his missiles in rapid succession. That incident occurred on March 16th, 1967.
He launched them and they went down?
No, the missiles were not launched. He just reported, they reported that the objects were above them, and at that point the missiles started shutting down. Yeah, disabled. The second audio recording you heard was that of Colonel Mywald talking about the fact that we had security light violations and we had to send guards out to one or more of the LFs. And they reported seeing the UFOs again. By the way, I've got more audio available that's where Colonel Mywald supports my entire statement about what occurred. So he was consistent on supporting this for up until the time he passed away last year. After we received relieved by another crew the next morning, right back to the base, we reported to the squadron commander's office. There we were ordered to sign pardon me, non-disclosure statements regarding our specific incident. I did sign a non-disclosure statement. Excuse me. And we were ordered not to talk to anybody about this. It was then designated a highly classified incident. At no time did we lose power during the incident. I want to emphasize we always had electrical power. The sensitive information network, SIN cables that carried the signals to the missile systems were triply shielded from electromagnetic interference. The preliminary investigation isolated the failure to the logic coupler at each missile. The logic coupler is associated with the missile guidance system. That's about the best I can explain to you what the logic coupler does. I'll refer you to a portion of the unit wing history. I believe you have documents that I supplied you with that talk about the Echo flight incident, and I'll just read part of it. It says, in the opinion of the team, was that externally generated signals caused the generation of these 2 channels and shut down the launch facilities. The possibility of this is very remote due to the fact that all 10 couplers would have to fail in the flight within a few seconds of each other. This statement confirms that signals were sent to each individual missile separately in order to disable them. From my knowledge of the operating system at the time, neither I nor the investigative team could define the method or means by which these signals were sent to disable the missiles, each in the same manner, meaning each missile failed for the same reason, guidance and control system failure. Mr. Robert Kaminsky was the Boeing team leader for the investigation of the Echo flight shutdown. In a response to our inquiry, he stated, "This kind of event is virtually impossible once the system was up and running. The team met with me to report their findings, and it was decided that the final report would have nothing significant in it to explain what happened at Echo flight."
Just one moment, Captain. We did not explain that, just working with my congressional research assistant on the end of the table, we are going to allow 10 minutes for each of you. I'm not sure, I just got the time sign for the captain, and I don't believe that he's been talking 10 minutes, has he? He has been talking 10 minutes. Captain, can you, and since we didn't let you know ahead of time, I'm going to give you additional 3 minutes, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. I'll
You're
try to
very
get through it as quickly
That's
as I
okay.
can. After meeting with the engineers to discuss the results of their investigation, Mr. Kaminsky was notified by his supervisor that he should not submit his final report because the incident was reported to be a UFO event. Even though the Boeing company was the principal contractor for the Minuteman I missile, the report on the incident was not submitted by specific request to the Air Force. However, the Air Force did perform their own classified investigation where they identified a possible failure mode as stated above. In my opinion, we did not have the technical capability to produce a machine then or now that would be able to instigate the failure mode of these missiles identified in the unit wing history. In addition, the unidentified objects displayed the physical and flight characteristics that no known aircraft type could achieve then or now. Therefore, I have concluded these objects were non-terrestrial in origin. Of an important related activity ongoing, and this is important, on December 17, 1969, the official U.S. Air Force investigation into the UFO phenomenon was terminated. The principal basis for this, and you have the Air Force position on UFOs, I believe. I've given you a copy of that. The principal basis for this was this termination was the evaluation of a report prepared by the University of Colorado entitled Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects. In 1966, the U.S. Air Force awarded a $500,000 contract to the University of Colorado for the purpose of studying the UFO phenomenon. I'll refer to this study as the Condon investigation, or its team leader, Edward Condon. In fact, it was never intended to be a scientific study because the Air Force did not propose that any scientific hypothesis regarding the phenomena be evaluated. The Condon team relied on input and evaluations of reported UFO incidents from Air Force officers at various bases. The Condon team was, except for one individual, not authorized to review classified reports of Air Force incidents regarding the phenomenon. They were not even informed that classified UFO files existed until after the termination of their study. I have evidence supporting this. With respect to the 1967 Echo and Oscar flight UFO incidents, there was a deliberate effort to keep information about those incidents from the Condon Committee. In 1967, Dr. Roy Craig, the chief investigator for the Condon Committee, was informed by Mr. Raymond Fowler, a contractor working for Sylvania on Minuteman Electrical Systems, that the Echo flight shutdowns at Malmstrom had occurred during a UFO sighting. In October '67, he visited Malmstrom to inquire about this. Dr. Craig recalls this inquiry with Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Chase, the base operations officer at Malmstrom. After Colonel Chase and I had exchanged pleasantries in his office, this is a quotation, I asked him about the Echo incident. The colonel caught his breath and expressed surprise that I knew of it. I can't talk about that, he said. Colonel Chase had assured me that the incident had not involved a UFO. Since Colonel Chase was the last man I would doubt, when he conveyed this information, I accepted the information as factual and turned the review over to Bob Lowe, who had received, Robert Lowe was the deputy condon, and he was the only one cleared to look at classified information. When Dr. Robert Lowe, the deputy condon, requested the Air Force allow him to review the secret report of the Echo incident, he was informed that the report would be too highly classified to allow that review. Dr. Craig did not interview any of the many witnesses that were named to him by Ray Fowler that he could have interviewed. He did not interview either of the crews, Echo or Oscar crew. In addition, the Air Force Office of Project Blue Book was deliberately misinformed about these incidents. In a letter from Colonel James Minot, and I think you have these letters in front of you, he was right pat, Blue Book essentially. He requested Colonel Chase in June of '67, inquired of reports they had received that there were equipment malfunctions and abnormalities during the UFO sightings. The written reply from Colonel Chase stated, this office has no knowledge of equipment malfunctions and abnormalities in equipment during the period of UFO sightings. This evidence and the Air Force...
Captain, I think you just have a short piece to go, is that right? Just one page left?
Just very short.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
I'm almost done.
Please proceed.
And by the way, this is a very complex case.
Absolutely, we can tell that. Yes, sir. Thank you, and we appreciate your testimony.
This is evidence that the Air Force purposefully denied the Condon investigators the knowledge that the Echo and Oscar flight shutdowns were UFO-related incidents. Since the Air Force cites this particular study as the primary reason for the official rejection of the UFO phenomenon, and claims that no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. And in light of my own experience and others, I must conclude the U.S. Air Force was and is engaged in lying and disinforming the public about the realities of the UFO phenomenon. That's the end of my statement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very briefly, I just want to point out the fact that the next two witnesses that you will hear from, Mr. Schindelli and Mr. Scott, this is the very first time they are going public, and I want to honor these guys for having the courage to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Captain. I'll be right with you, Mr. Schindelli. A couple things. Everybody's written statement will be a part of the record, and we hope that you'll leave one with us so we can make them part of our dossier as we put it together. Just know that we appreciate all of you coming, and we know how difficult it can be from time to time. But we didn't introduce our panel here to this afternoon session, but what you have sitting here is 80 years plus of congressional experience from various committees, including armed services and health and science and other experts around the table, but you'll hear a bit from them as you go forward. If, in fact, you don't reach the 10 minutes or go a little bit over, we're going to be lenient because we know how important this panel is, as all of them have been. So rest assured, we will hear you. Your statement will be an official part of the record, and that brings you on. Mr. Shillelagh.
That is Schindley.
Schindley?
That's right.
All right.
My name is David D. Schindley,
Schindley.
Captain, U.S. Air Force, retired. In 1966, I was involved in an incident while stationed at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. I was told to never speak of the incident again, and also told that as far as I was concerned, it never happened. Because of that, I am before you today with a bit of trepidation. I must say a lot of trepidation, as I have never before shown my face in person on this matter. I was a Minuteman ICBM launch control officer, a first lieutenant, and a deputy missile combat crew commander in a two-man launch crew with my crew commander who held the rank of captain. He was about 15 years older than I. You can show that first slide, please, if you can. I held a top secret clearance, which was required for my job. It all began one morning when I was watching TV while having breakfast, and I heard the local news announcer mention that some residents in the town of Mulhall, North Dakota, had seen strange lights overnight, which they attributed to a UFO. This caught my attention because I was scheduled for duty that morning at a launch control facility called November Flight, about 3 miles west of Mulhall and about 37 miles north of Minot, North Dakota. I lived in the town of Minot at the time, and I drove to the air base to attend the morning pre-departure crew briefing at wing headquarters, where all 15 missile crews would normally meet each day prior to pulling alert duty at their respective launch control facilities. During that pre-departure crew briefing, it was mentioned that some missiles at November Flight had gone off alert, but there was no further information provided. I immediately connected this to the news item that I heard earlier in the morning regarding a possible UFO sighting near the town of Mulhall. When the briefing was over, several of the launch crews seated near me commented about the news item, which they had also heard that morning. And there was speculation about a possible connection with November Flight. My crew commander had also heard the news item. And we were both anxious and quite curious about what we might find as we drove out to the launch control facility. If you could display my second slide. On this second slide, I don't believe you members have a picture of this, but you can see it on the screen here. This is the November Launch Control Facility from an air view from Google Earth. if you could show that again. There is an access road to the flight, to the facility from the north, coming down to the flight facility, where there's a main gate at the perimeter fence. The perimeter fence goes around the launch control facility building, top side, and there's a garage to the right of the main gate. The usual procedure upon arrival was to inspect the grounds and building, but this time my commander immediately went into the security section of the building to debrief security personnel and guards. The security center was the topmost north side of the building, near the main gate. I entered the facility from the back door at the end of the facility, and then encountered the site manager, a tech sergeant, who immediately took me into the day room and asked if I had been briefed on the previous night's events. I said I hadn't. We then proceeded toward the windows on the west side of the day room, where he described to me the large object with flashing lights that had been hovering just outside the fence that night. And he spread his arms out in front of him to indicate its size, the size of the object. Based on his description, I estimated the object may have been 80 to 100 feet wide and approximately 100 feet from the building, maybe a bit closer. I immediately asked if it had been a helicopter, and he said that it just hovered with no noise being heard, quite unlike the usual noisy helicopters heard from within the building. I also asked what the flashing lights were like, but he could not answer. They were unlike any he had ever seen. They were not like the usual beacon lights on planes, but something like a pulsating glow. He then said the object, while hovering close to the ground, then glided to the right toward the north end of the building and out of sight. The object then came into view from the security section of the facility and hovered just behind and slightly to the right of the main gate, concealed partly by the large garage located within the fenced area to the right of the gate. As you can see there, the garage is labeled the second position of the object. This location put the object almost directly above the hardened launch control capsule, located 60 feet below ground. All our missiles, our 10 missiles, were located 4 to 14 miles away from the launch control facility. This capsule was located approximately underneath the garage. This was the launch crew quarters and the launch control center for all 10 interconnected nuclear-tipped missiles that were located away from the launch facility. Security personnel confirmed everything that the site manager had related to me. My commander and I then proceeded to take the elevator down to the launch control center, the capsule, to relieve the two-man officer crew below. After entering the capsule, our eyes were immediately transfixed on the launch control console, which showed that all missiles were off alert and unlaunchable. We had never seen such a thing before. The outgoing crew briefed us on the wild events that transpired overnight and indicated that the missiles malfunctioned at the time the object was hovering directly above the capsule and next to the main gate. We speculated on the possibility of an EMF pulse that might have created the situation. We had no doubt, however, that the 10 outlying nuclear-tipped missiles of November flight had been compromised, tampered with, and put out of commission by the object that had paid a visit. Normally, it was quite unusual to have even one missile down, except for maintenance. And Wing Headquarters was very proud of having more than 95% uptime for all 150 missiles of the wing. The following morning, after we had been relieved by the follow-on crew, we arrived topside, and I attempted to further query the flight security controller who had been on duty at the time of the situation. But he interrupted me, and he said that he had been instructed not to discuss the incident. That is when my commander then told me that he had received a call while I was on a scheduled rest break down below, and he was told that we were never to discuss the incident. When I asked where the directive came from, he said the OSI. He evidently received a call from the OSI. With no discussion allowed on the subject between him or me together or with anybody else, my crew commander and I were left in limbo and left on our own to conjure in our own minds how other situations might unfold and be handled. Normally, the Air Force would train us on all procedures. We were in a simulator constantly training. This serious lack of follow-through by the Air Force was more than bewildering, and it served to keep this situation on our minds. Together, there were a dozen of us involved with this incident. My commander and I were not there during the encounter, but we had to deal with the ramifications of the incident, and I'll never forget the frightened emotion on the faces of topside airmen who were gathered with me when I was briefed by the site manager. Because those of us at the Launch Control Facility, besides those of us at the Launch Control Facility, there had to be many more people involved with this, including maintenance people who had to retarget and reline the missiles, also additional security personnel to guard and protect the missile launch facilities, and who knows how many others on base were concerned. Everyone had been silenced. The incident was never discussed, and I never heard a word of any other incident from people that I associated with. I never spoke a word about my incident for almost 40 years, and my wife never knew. After several years of searching the internet in hopes of finding someone who would give me a clue about my incident.
Excuse me, Mr. Shingo.
Yes.
I yield you additional 2 minutes, excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I then found what was described by Captain Robert Salas, and I felt immediate, joyous freedom from my haunting memory. I then informed my wife. Since then, I have run across several missileers from my days at Minot who were there with me in the wing, and 2 of them have gone public with their own experiences. 2 others have described to me their unique experiences, but they have pleaded that I not divulge their names. They fear losing their Air Force pension, are losing their personal integrity and keeping a secret, or being ridiculed. I also know of 2 other officers involved in incidents, but they will not admit to their secret, probably for the same reasons. And then there's the late Captain Val Smith of my squadron, who is mentioned in official documents released by FIA. He was interviewed by the late Dr. Alan Hynek of Blue Book fame, who wrote an article in the Saturday Evening Post, published on 17 December 1966, which described the incident that Smith was involved with on 25th August 1966. Hynek stated in the article, "This incident was not picked up by the press